Okay, we're down to our final topic, the origins of life on Earth. Um, okay, so there's a lot of mystery surrounding this. Some things scientists are still trying to figure out. Some things have been, we're kind of sure of happened. One of the things we're pretty sure of down here is of the stuff we're very sure of. Origin of the Earth was around 4.6 billion years ago. Billion years ago. Right? Origin of the planet. I'm just writing this bigger, just seeing that. Um, And plus, this numbering system is in millions of years. I just want you to understand the time scale involved. 4.6 billion is a long time ago from our perspective. Now, during this time, the planet probably, here's an artist rendering of what the planet might have looked like at that time. Red, molten, volcanic action. Most of the ground was covered with, and this is for a long time, for about 500 million years. This is, and again, just keep that number in mind. 500 million years. The ground is lava. Imagine being in an environment so hot that it's not cool enough for rock to form. That's how hot of an environment you had at this time. Eventually, around 3.9 billion years ago, things settle down. Settle down a little bit, right? Again, at this time, 4.6 billion years ago, you have an atmosphere that is basically methane. The greenhouse effect is operating at maximum capacity. The Earth is boiling. Things start to settle around 3.9 billion years ago. The Earth cools a bit. A crust starts to form around the Earth, and we're thinking that life occurred sometime, here. But the first evidence we have of life is around 3.5 billion years ago. We have fossil evidence of prokaryotes, which, as you remember from normal bio, are cells without nuclei, a little bit simpler than eukaryotic organisms typically. You're going to find these around 3.5 billion years ago. So we believe that the time life formed was sometime around in this range of 4.0 billion to 3.5 billion. Sometime in there, we know life form. We don't know exactly when. We don't know exactly how, but let's talk about what we do know. Because as scientists, that's what we're seeking, right? So we know that early Earth did not have a lot of oxygen. So Miller and Urey wanted to set up this experiment. They wanted to make something like early Earth. And if you remember, we had a lot of methane. This is methane right here. This is 1953. Methane, hydrogen gas, ammonia gas, and water condensation. Water. Once the environment cooled enough at 3.9 billion years ago, you started having liquid water on the surface. Right? Before it was just a gas. So here we have water as well, probably condensed from this boiling over here. So what they did is they just put all these molecules in here, very simple molecules. Each of them has no more than, 5 atoms here, 4 atoms, 2 atoms, 3 atoms. So very small, simple molecules. They wanted to know, can more complex biological molecules form based on these simple molecules? So that's what they were seeking to find out. What they did was they tried to set up early Earth conditions, and this organic chemistry equipment. They had a simulated ocean, a heat source. This is very, very hot ocean here. Water vapor would travel up here, kind of drop. There was electrical lightning in here, simulated lightning to simulate that possible energy spark that could have helped to cause these, to help to form these early structures. And then they had this water kind of condensed down here as well as it cools based on this little condenser with cold water running through it. It basically cools, runs down here, cooled water kind of contain these organic compounds. They wanted to know, are we going to find some of the complex compounds needed for life? And what do you know? They did. So Miller-Urey did find complex molecules. Primitive Earth provided inorganic precursors from which organic molecules could have been synthesized because of the presence of available free energy and the absence of a significant quantity of atmospheric oxygen. So Miller-Urey ran this experiment. It's been repeated many times. And in fact, the only thing they've confirmed is that they found more amino acids than they would have expected. Also, they've refined this experiment a bit to make it look more like we know there were some sulfides up in the air in early Earth now. So they've added some stuff to it, and they've even found a greater diversity of molecules found. What they found were the basic building blocks for proteins, as you might remember, or amino acids, right? And these are large, complex molecules, right? Something like this. You get your ammonia, it's bonded to a carboxyl group. This is basically the most basic amino acid you can throw out very quick. This is glycine. So this is an amino acid. They found many different types of these amino acids. These make up all of the proteins in your body. There's 20 of them, and they've since found that there were over 20 found in this sample area right here. So another theory is that organic molecules could have been transported to Earth by a meteorite or celestial event. If you want to read more about this, because it is a theory that does hold some merit, it's hard to test it. That's the problem with this one. But they do find that meteorites do have a lot of these carbon-containing complex organic molecules on them. And also, if you want to look up something interesting, look up left-handed amino acids. This is one of the things that makes some scientists think that there is some merit to this hypothesis, but it's still a lot of work needs to be done to disprove this or prove this. But go ahead and Google that if you're more interested in this theory, because I think it's pretty interesting. Okay, so the origins of life on Earth. I took this from. I have a link at the bottom here. The Berkeley Evolution Site is very good for a lot of things. You can get lost reading here for a long time, but I want to talk about the origin of life and how it kind of really started as far as we believe. There's something called the RNA world hypothesis. RNA world hypothesis. This hypothesis posits that simple organic molecules were formed. RNA molecules were formed. So this is an example of an RNA molecule right here. Simple molecule may look complex to you, but it is one of the more simple building blocks in our body. And we believe that these formed before anything else, before DNA. Before DNA or proteins. Before any of these evolved, the first thing we were thought to have was RNA. So these RNA molecules can kind of spontaneously form. The second step, they begin to replicate. Right, RNA somehow strings together. It kind of has this complementary, if you remember, AUCG or RNA bases that we typically use. Adenine, uracil, cytosine, guanine. So basically, these RNA single-stranded molecules form. They have some sort of base pairing system where they start to spontaneously replicate. Right, and that's the key for life: is being able to replicate. Well, they began to evolve, and they began to undergo natural selection. RNA molecules that could replicate better survived longer and were able to replicate more, right? Selection can begin acting immediately once you have something that can replicate and has the ability to mutate. Keep in mind, this is before we even have a cell membrane, which is our next step. Replicating molecules somehow become enclosed within a lipid membrane, a lipid bilayer, a lipid monolayer. So they become enclosed in this layer and begin to replicate. It being enclosed within a cell membrane provides some advantages that you can probably tell immediately. There's a little bit of protection from the outside. It can be more selective. Selectivity. What it brings in and out. It can maintain a different environment on the inside. This could be environment 1 than it is on the outside 2, right? So it can maintain its own special environment that it needs for replicating. This is the next step. It wouldn't take long for these protocells to begin to evolve very rapidly themselves, right? These things would take over very quickly once you realize how well adapted they are, right? Once they're enclosed by this lipid membrane. Okay. Some cells begin to evolve modern metabolic processes and outcompeted those of older forms. So now you start to have this RNA kind of forming, learning to transcribe DNA. DNA is beginning to be formed. And then you start to get how things work today. DNA contains instructions. DNA is transcribed by RNA. It's made into proteins. The reason for this is that proteins RNA is very unique in that it can code information, right? Info, it can make information, and complex structures. And it can form complex structures. Well, what do you know today that encodes information? DNA is the information code, right? It happens to do it a little bit better than RNA, right? Because it's more stable. DNA is more stable. More stable. It's double-stranded. It's much more stable than RNA. So it's better at providing information, at carrying information, storing information. Now, as far as RNA forming complex structures, what else do you know that does that? Well, proteins do that. Proteins form complex structures, right? Only they do it much better. Can form more complex structures. So, this, proteins are kind of superior to RNA, and DNA is superior to RNA. But the unique thing about RNA is that it can do both of these things: store information and create complex structures. And there's many things in life today that still have RNA in them, or complex structures that are built by RNA. Ribosomes are one of those. They have RNA in them, and they are made of proteins, right? Ribosomes, very complex structures. But there's many things. There's all sorts of things that are made of RNA in our bodies and in living things that are complex structures. So its unique ability to possibly do both of these things is probably what gives the RNA world hypothesis some merit. The last thing that happened, of course, is multicellularity evolved. You can see these are single cells over here. This is a fossil, actually. It seems like this side is designed for a unique structure. Of course, multicellularity is a product of having an organism that is starting to specialize its cells. So you might have a cell here, number 1, that's for feeding. You might have cells 2, 3, 4, and 5 that are specialized to pass on waste, and maybe cell 6 here is a waste disposal unit cell, right? So this is specialized cells. And this is probably one of the last things to evolve, right? I mean, it makes sense. The first early multicellular organisms were probably less organisms, less specialized, and more of these colonies of cells that kind of clump together. But eventually you had this specialization that occurred finally. So I hope this makes sense. I hope you kind of understand the origins of life on Earth a little bit better. If you research a little bit on your own, you might find some interesting things about this, because it is an interesting topic. So I'm going to call it at that. Good luck on your exam.